thank you everybody for joining us at Hope for Our Times. Obviously, we know what's going on in Israel. We're all being updated. We're keeping people updated. Unbelievable. We're reminded to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. We know Israel will always exist, so will the Jews, so will Jerusalem, although many powers and many people don't want that to happen. We know God has said it will, but at the same time, such unbelievable things are taking place. People's lives are being destroyed. War is taking place. But with that, we're going to take a break from Israel right now. I have a special guest on today joining me because while all that's going on with Ukraine, all that's going on with Israel and Iran, guess what? Our lives are in danger because of this globalist machine that is moving forward. And we're going to be talking about that right now. My guest today is Patrick Wood. Thank you, Patrick, for joining me again.
My pleasure, Tom. These are such important topics. And, you know, everywhere we look today, we see this war against humanity closing in on us. It's everywhere. That's what we addressed 2 weeks ago or 2 Saturdays ago in our Omni-War conference, a symposium that we did on well, I guess we did it on Worldview Weekend, on CHD, Children's Health Defense, and also on Technocracy.news. But this symposium was spread all over the world, talking about this concept of omni-war. It's everywhere at this point, coming at us at every conceivable juncture of life for us.
It's really unbelievable, all the different tentacles, I guess you could say. And when we look at technology, Patrick, I have a lot of questions to ask you, but I'm just going to begin here. So I just read that artificial general intelligence, it looks like it's going to be here by 2027. I'm going to ask you this. Why is that significant to us? Why should we be concerned, or should we be concerned? What is artificial general intelligence as opposed to artificial intelligence that we hear? Can you fill us in?
Well, you bet. Let me back up just a sec and say there's no such thing as artificial intelligence, for one thing. We use that term. Intelligence is something that God gave to people, humans. It's not meant for machines, period. This is a unique human quality that's part of being human, is part of humanness. So if somebody says, well, it's artificial intelligence, it doesn't compute. It just doesn't compute. Nevertheless, it's very powerful. And if you look at it as like an expert system that can analyze data, make a response to that data, and then issue commands back to whatever the data has been collected on, you can see how it could be used for control. That's the whole idea of AI is control. It's not for the pure interests of humanity. It's not for you to do a search on Google or whatever and figure out what's what you want to get in text form. It's not for you to write a white paper or a term paper or et cetera, right? It's about control. All of these data centers that are being built around the country at this point, all of these collectively probably have as much computing power as all of the computers behind it, before it, in history. And now they're telling us, oh, this is just to answer a few simple questions for you on Google. No, I'm sorry. This is setting up a control grid that can basically control everything in society worldwide, but at least in our country. And this whole thing is targeted against us to control us in every phase of our life. So when we talk about artificial general intelligence, in any case, that will be a new level of intelligence. But basically, The idea is when you get PhD level intelligence in a narrow field like chemistry, biology, etc., the idea about general intelligence is it'll combine all those things at one time, and it will give you a general discipline across all these platforms, be able to talk about mathematics and chemistry and physics all at the same time. And what they're thinking is, well, what that means for us individually, who cares? On one hand, I don't want to talk about physics anyway, much less quantum physics versus biology versus whatever, mathematics. I don't care about that stuff. I'm sure nobody else in our audience cares about it either. But when you consider that a body of knowledge could be launched at that point that contains all of the disciplines of the scientific world and at least all the literature as well, and from the civic world, you have an entity that will appear to be intelligent. There'll be no wisdom. There will be no, I'll say wisdom. There'll be no application of wisdom to anything. There'll be no mercy, of course. No, that's a human quality as well, or God quality. There's going to be no grace in it. If the science says that's what you do, whatever. Like Fauci said, right? If you have to obey the science.
Yeah.
It's like, and they have the science.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So I'm looking at this book. You have you have a chapter on here, Convergence, Science or Scientism, where I'm pretty sure you deal with that. Technocracy, restructuring civilization, Technocracy, then and now, the genesis of transhumanism, the Great Reset, the control grid, science of social engineering. You answer the question, who's driving this train? You talk about the one world religion. I mean, these are all topics that are huge in and of themselves.
Yes.
So, and I want to get into them in just a minute. And then I want to go here before we're done too. The UN's this pact for the future. It's global control. You've been talking about this control that's coming.
Yes.
And that's what this whole thing is all about. Let me ask you this, then we're going to get into some specifics, but how do you see the merging of global governance and technology, including AI, aligning with biblical prophecies?
I think this is where we came in the last movie, actually, where we were talking about how the Antichrist would be preparing for the tribulation period. And we know this makes sense. He's not going to take any of that 7-year period to prepare a system that he's going to control in the end. That doesn't make any sense to me anyway. I think probably to other people as well. That's being prepared right now as we speak. That's what all this business about AI is, I think. It's about all the other narratives that have been floated on sustainable development and these 17 sustainable development goals and all this nonsense about climate change and, cows that flatulate and, the reduction of food around the world. And all this stuff is just an expression of technocracy going forward. And, it's kind of hard to express it, but I have to say this all dates back to a religious proposition that was made in like somewhere around 1805 by a French philosopher by the name of Henri de Saint-Simon, who postulated that a scientist, this was his definition, a scientist, my dear friends, is a man who foresees, tells the future, in other words. It's because science provides the means to predict that it is useful and the scientists are superior to all other men. At that point, he wanted to reform or change Catholicism into being a religion of scientists or science that would be administrated not by religious priests like before, but by scientific priests, engineers and scientists and technicians. And this was kind of preposterous at that point, for sure. But when you get into the 1900s and you see this expressed, for instance, with the technocracy movement, then you have all people, for instance, writing about scientism all of a sudden, like people like C.S. Lewis. He splayed it back in that day, just, critiqued it to death, and it needed to be. But it was declared a religion along the way, and it was flat out a religion. So you had other people like F.A. Hyatt also wrote about the scientism. There were many others that did as well. Today, you ask anybody on the street, what's scientism? They don't have a clue. Well, didn't you read the book from, like from C.S. Lewis along the way? No, don't have a clue. But this has now morphed into this whole business of transhumanism, which is decidedly religious because it seeks to escape death. Death is declared a disease now. We're in the business of curing diseases, so surely we can cure death. No, they're not going to do it. But this is where this religion has brought us to. So anyway, I'm not sure if I'm rambling here, but there's.
No, you're not rambling. H.G. Wells was one of these big promoters of that, amongst many other names that would be commonly known to people. And it was Fauci who said something about when you're questioning me, you're questioning science. And then during the whole last 5 years, science was elevated to a place of being God. It really, in the minds of these people, they want scientists to run the country. And you have science coming in different forms trying to run everything because these people think that they know better, and it's making decisions. I think it was H.G. Wells said that this world needs to be run by people who are unemotionally involved, as he's describing and this describes scientism, unemotionally involved. You look at the facts, therefore we eliminate 7.5 billion people from the planet or whatever, because they're not needed. And when you have science has become God, well, then you enter in a Yuval Noah Harari or all the rest. By the way, everybody, just real quick for you, Jan Markell's going to join me on Monday. This coming Monday, October 7, is the one-year memorial of the attack against Israel. She's going to join me on Monday. Tuesday, Jack Hibbs is going to be joining me right here at Hope for Our Times. And then also, if you can, in Temecula on October 9th, Southern California, 412 Church in Temecula, Sunday night, 5 p.m. Anaya Naftali is going to be joining me from Israel October 13th, Sunday night. So if you can, 412 Church Temecula, it's going to be a great time. So mark your calendars for all of those things. Okay, let me ask you this. You have in here the science of social engineering is just one of your chapters that you have. I mean, I can look at that social engineering, and for me, you definitely see it. I think that's what we see going on with the kids, but there's in genderism and all these other things. But fill us in a little bit more besides what the public would know if we're paying attention. We can see social engineering, but there's more to us that I think we're not even aware of, and it's been going on for a long time.
The reason that the early technocrats had an issue with people was that they couldn't make people do what they wanted them to do. For instance, they could build factories, they could build systems of things, but it all depended on people to run it. Now, a factory can be engineered with sensors and whatever things that figure out what's going wrong with it. Can't do that with people. So you have to have people to run the factories and run the society, but they couldn't control the people in the same way they can they control the machine. So this business of science, the science of social engineering, this became their main problem that they had to solve in order to get people to like herding cats, right? To get them to do what they wanted them to do. So when they led with this definition of technocracy in like 1937, that they said technocracy is the science of social engineering. It is, they said, the science of social engineering. And then they go on to talk about the scientific operation of the entire social mechanism to produce and distribute goods and services for everybody, all of us. We don't produce it; they do. They give us our K rations, I suppose. But they wanted to lead first with this business of the science of social engineering. That's an oxymoron in itself, in a sense, because it's not a science in that sense. It's a dark art, is what it is. But when we see today all of the stuff going on with propaganda in the world today, it's been weaponized against the minds of billions of people around the world. When we see mind control experiments, for instance, what DARPA did originally with the MK Ultra experiments, that was a real thing. People have exaggerated probably, but that was a real thing at that point. And so today, the main weapon that's being leveled against us is AI. AI is the consummate way to exercise the so-called science of social engineering, because you can do it in a way that people can't detect what's going on. They don't know that they're being engineered. And further, it's not just telling them what to say or what to think necessarily, but it wants to change how they think, so that they don't have to be prompted to think about a certain thing. They will come to that conclusion on their own. This is a new level that we've never seen before. You can force somebody like Winston in 1984. He had to say, well, 2 + 2 is 5, and he finally said it, but he didn't think it. So you can force people to say something under the breath or say something else maybe, but now with social engineering at this level, people will not know that they're being engineered, and they won't see that shift in their thinking, where they're now all of a sudden they're saying things that they never would have said a year ago or 2 years ago. Very dangerous stuff.
Yeah, I have a chapter in my book called, a section in my book called The Manchurian Children, taken from the movie and novel The Manchurian Candidate, that's really what it was, is social engineering within this Chinese camp of prisoners that were able to be manipulated and to do things that they wouldn't have done, to believe things happened that never happened, to not believe things that actually did happen. But we see it, it appears to me this is exactly what's going on with the schools. I believe this is going on with all of the climate talk.
Yes.
You can always say, you can also say climate's changing, because it's probably hotter today in Phoenix than it was on a previous, October day, sometime in the past. So climate all's changed, but summers are hot, winters are cold. This is just the way it is. But when you take a group of people, Patrick, and it seems to me it works like this, and all you tell them since they were born, so just go back 20 years or 30 years. If you're 30 years old, probably the only thing you've ever heard is climate change and global warming. And with no frame of reference, well, wait a minute, this is the way it always is. If you're older, it's always this, it's always 115 degrees in Phoenix in the summer, right? This is it. But now they say it's the hottest ever. It's never been this way. And that's all they've ever heard. Hence, that's part of the social engineering too, it would seem to me. And in the Clubber Ohms book in 1991, where they said, hey, we can manipulate behaviors and thoughts using pollution, and we can make man the enemy by saying it's your fault, therefore we change behavior. So
yes,
this is all part of it.
It really is. You remember the movie, the original movie called Gaslight from
1938, I think it was.
Yeah,
I think it was 38.
Somewhere back then. That was a process where this guy, a husband, drove his wife insane by gaslighting her. That's where the term come from, on saying that whatever she was seeing, she didn't see. And over time, this was a process. It built up, starting with one small thing, and then something else, something else, something else. Finally, she just loses her mind. When we see all of this gaslighting stuff being thrown at society about global warming for decades now, about changing the atmosphere, changing the genetic structure of things, whatever. Oh, it's all good for you. We're going to save the planet. All these things have been basically a gaslighting operation. At the beginning of it, nobody really saw what was going on. But as it builds on itself, now all of a sudden, people have fallen into outright deception, and they will never probably get out. It's going to be really hard for a lot of people to get out of this, because that's the way gaslighting works. So today we have all of these things around us in the world. They're telling us, no, whatever you see, don't trust your eyes. Just look at something else. But you can't trust your eyes now. You can't trust your ears. You can't trust your senses. Your mind to conceive of what's true. At that point, you're going to be in a psychotic state, having been separated from reality. This is the devil's plan from the get-go. It took a long time, but now we're here, basically.
Now we're here, mass chaos, mass confusion. When we look at everything going on in Israel, it's like, how do you explain all of these things are all coming to a head at the same time? Thinking about this gaslighting, I'm reading this report the other day that says children are being told, it's a particular school district, can't remember which one, that asking questions is a form of disinformation. And it was John Kerry, who was at the World Economic Forum, says we need to secure the votes, because then we can make sure that we control the information. I mean, it was obvious what he was saying, so we can go after people like you and me, therefore, in controlling this. So, I mean, so the gaslighting involves, we're all liars. Thinking of that novel and the book, Gaslighting, is you're told, we know what's true, but everybody's told, well, that's not true. Well, wait a minute, I know it's true. And then it drives people crazy. And then their thinking totally shifts in that. Let me ask you this, because I want to get into this global pact for the future. Yes. And it's very concerning, because as everybody's being gaslit, we have this social engineering that's taking place. Again, it's been going on a long time, but we've like arrived at this head. It's like here, we can see it, and we're shouting at people. We're claimed to be full of lies and disinformation. We need to be shut up and all that. So you have the global pact for the future. I'm reading it. It does not look good, but yet it looks so biblical at the same time, in the sense of what the Bible warns us about what is coming. Can you explain to our viewers what is the global pact for the future? It was at the UN meeting. And are all nations going to be subject to it? What's the intent? And then I'll ask you a few more questions after that.
Yeah, this business with the pact for the future, it contained three separate elements. The first was the pact itself. Then there was an addendum, they call it the digital pact for the future. I think that's where most of the meat lies here. The reason I say that is because this push for a digital ID worldwide for every human on Earth, if they can ever achieve this truly, and they call that a legal identity, by the way, You can say if somebody has your social security number, they can say you're you, but they can't prove it, right? So somebody hacks your identity, they really don't know it. Was it really Tom Hughes or Pat Wood? A legal identity goes beyond that to prove proof positive that it's you sitting on the other side of the keyboard personally. And if they can do that, they can track everything that is about you in the universe, every transaction, everything, every web page you go to, every emotion you emote. So the idea here is to get everybody on board now to create this new digital ID. I don't know exactly how they're going to do it at this point, but that's what they wanted. That's what they want to do. In the meantime, the whole body of the pact for the future, if you read all of the elements of it, you kind of come away thinking, what the heck are they talking about? It's a lot of gobbledygook. And nevertheless, their intent was to reframe the United Nations into a version 2.0. In other words, to supercharge the effort of the United Nations. It was already supercharged, I'm sure, before, but now they want to be on steroids. And so they're kind of calling it the version 2.0 of the United Nations to get all the nations of the world to accelerate their efforts to get the 17 Sustainable Development Goals in place by 2030. Those goals were established, by the way, at the 2030 Agenda meeting in 2015. So here we are now, 2024. They only have 6 years left to meet this goal. That I don't know why that's 2030 is really the most significant goal for them. We'll find out, I expect. Maybe that's what the devil's expecting, where the tribulation will start. Who knows? But they're really intent on compressing the time frame now between now and 2030. That's only 6 years. Mm-hmm. Just a very short period of time.
It is. I think it began with Agenda 21, and yes. That wasn't that like in the 1993 or something like that in Rio de Janeiro?
Right, 1992.
92. Yeah. Okay, and then you have that, Agenda 21 for the 21st century. 2015 comes along. Well, let's give us a target. And my guess is they've got the target. Whether or not it's the devil in their head, they do have a target. It was in 2015 also that the Pope announced by 2030 you'll own nothing and be happy. Yes. We didn't start hearing that comment until probably a year or two ago, except for us who were paying attention. It was 2015 when he said it. But we look at this, everything is zeroing that way. Let me ask you this, when we see us, if you're a believer in the Lord Jesus Christ, how much of this is a concern for us? And should it be? I do think it should be, but I'd like to know your thoughts on it. And also, along these same lines, just for everybody watching this, if you would like, subscribe, and share this video, it's one of the only ways we can really combat the lies with the truth, because we are told that we're full of disinformation, and so we can combat the lies with the truth. And a couple more things, and then we'll get on some more with Pat. But again, Jan Markell will be with me on Monday, October 7th, memorial of the October 7th invasion of Israel last year. Jack Hibbs, Tuesday, October 8th. Naftali, October 13th, 412 Church in Temecula. And 5 o'clock p.m., make sure you join us, Naftali, 412 Church in Temecula, 5 p.m. It will be fantastic. He's coming all the way from Israel. On behalf of Netanyahu, by the way. But it's going to be a great evening. If you want to do something really cool also, you can join me for, I have a check this out, Patrick. I have a Footsteps of Paul trip coming up. We go to Ephesus, which is off the charts. Patmos, of course, this is if we're not raptured and we're still allowed to travel. But Patmos, where John received the words for the book of Revelation, where he wrote those words down. We're going to Crete. We think of Paul and Timothy. We have a couple of little vacation times in Mykonos and Santorini. We'll be in Athens, Corinth. Think of Paul writing 1st and 2nd Corinthians. We think we're going to be also Mars Hill, where we have the words of Acts chapter 17. It's going to be a fantastic trip if you want to go. That's coming up in April of 2025, Lord willing. Just putting it out there for you if you want to join us. And then if we have an extension to Rome, if you want to do the extension too. But it'd be a great trip. Anyways, that's a lot out there. But I'm looking going, man, I need to have a little bit of joy in the time that we have left. And doing a trip like that is great. You get so much biblical history too. But Patrick, as we see these things just culminating, the significant to us is if you're a believer in Christ, when we look at this global pact, isn't Australia already kind of testing the grounds with this?
Say it again.
Australia, are they?
Australia.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Yeah, aren't they? It seems to me they're like a guinea pig for these things.
Yeah, they really have been, and out of sight, out of mind, I guess, for us up here, they're far, far away. But yes, Australia has been, it used to be really the bastion of freedom in the world, not anymore. And they've been knuckled down and oppressed. It's just absolutely amazing. But the same thing has happened in the UK as well. You know, the UK is just gone over the edge right now. Over the top with, for instance, jailing people for just saying something on a street that they don't like, or posting a innocuous social media post, and people are getting hard prison time for it. We've never seen anything like this before in the history of the world, honestly. But Australia is following in that footstep.
So I look at this, and if we look at the last 5 years, Canada has been hit by these same things. It's the Western world that has really come under this weird social engineering, this tech-driven. Granted, we already know there's social credit system in China and so forth. I remember saying years ago, the social credit system in China will be exported, and other leaders in other parts of the world will import that, and they will perfect it with technology. Well, here we are, because it really is. China's is kind of archaic in comparison to what we are facing. And I have a theory for why things are going so fast in the Western world. What you mentioned in the UK, why we have, like, Australia's already in it, Canada's experiencing all kinds of things. Obviously, we can see the freight train coming here in the US too. But I believe it's because Antichrist rises out of the West. And so the West is being prepared with people can't even think straight anymore. They don't know what truth is. You can present people with facts. They can't receive facts. They'll believe the lies. And I think why it's happening in the West, I believe, is because the West is being prepared for that leader to come out of it. Have you ever thought of that?
I have, and I generally agree with you about that. However, I want to point out that China, in particular, has been a technocracy from at least 1976, when they came back on the world stage. I've had several articles along the way, and I just have one currently call on technocracy.news called "Proof That China Has Been a Technocracy Since 1976." When China came on the scene back then, out of the dark ages, literally, they were worse than North Korea at that point. They had no economic system. People were starving. They were oppressed. It was just a horrible situation. When Chairman Deng came to the United States to talk with Brzezinski and Kissinger about coming back into the fold, if you will, the economic fold of the world, they didn't teach them about capitalism or about free market economics. They taught them about technocracy. This has been acknowledged now in scholarly reports over the years. And the one I just posted right here, that's one of them. that based on the context of our invention of technocracy in the 1930s, they adopted this model for governing their economic system and for engineering their economic system. And they've been spreading this around the world to anybody who will take it. For instance, in South America, Africa, you name it, even in Europe, and even back to us, if you can imagine that. They've so spread this virus around the world that everybody at this point is just accepting it. Like, well, we don't know where it came from, but it must. They look at China as a communist dictatorship. It's not anymore. That's one of the reasons I'm hopping up and down about this, is because if we don't recognize China for what it is, how can we ever defeat it? You can't do that. If you're going to fight communism, you're going to be boxing as shadows at that point. All that to say, China has been the engine of technocracy around the world. We were part of the start of it. Our Silicon Valley big tech companies have exacerbated it for sure, but we see in the West, like you say, probably this is where the Antichrist is going to come out of. But I wouldn't be totally sure, but it seems that way at this point.
If people want to follow you, you're on Substack. So all of your articles are there. People can subscribe, they can read. So how would they find you, Patrick?
Well, technocracy.news is that's the heartbeat of my work right now.
So you guys all see it there. When Patrick, you can see it there in the credits and also in the description. But I would encourage you to subscribe to a Substack. Patrick, on this also, you have who's driving this train in a one world religion emerges, 2 different chapters. You look at who's driving the train. There's all different names. We have different nations. Klaus Schwab said regarding China, he seems to love what China was doing. That's the way we all need to operate. With the UN, we can see these things. So are there certain people that are behind it, or I mean, well, obviously there are, but I mean, who do you see?
Right now, in my opinion, and strongly held, by the way, the driving force for this whole thing is the system of central banks around the world. In particular, the Bank for International Settlements. That's the central bank of the central banks, right? It's based in Basel, Switzerland, and basically it issues all the monetary policy, et cetera, for all the central banks around the world, including China, include Israel, Germany. All these nations have a central bank. We have one called the Federal Reserve. These are all private banks, however. They're not owned by the national governments. These are private banks. And what we see is the ways that I can say that is because I made a study at the results in that chapter in my book showing that the central banks are the ones basically issuing the policies driving the world right now. So when you look at central bank digital currencies, for instance, everybody sees that, oh, this is not going to end well. We don't want them knowing everything that we do, everything we spend, et cetera. But this is the major overarching goal that the global elite has at this point, is to capture the whole system in this digital world. And it requires a digital ID as well.
Very fascinating. You look at a company like a corporation like BlackRock. These things are all tied in together.
Oh, yes.
And then you have the ESG scores, you have the SDG, which everybody's going to be forced to comply. You read the 17 SDG goals; they all sound so nice. Well, let's get rid of all poverty. I mean, really. Well, I mean, we start looking at them. They sound nice, but actually, they're extremely destructive and crushing to the masses. The only way they can, the DEI scores, whatever it is, the only way they can do this is really to crush the people and to control them. Patrick, when I look at that and I see Book of Revelation, you see the riders on the white horse, the red horse, the black horse, and the pale horse. I look at the black horse, the third horse of the Book of Revelation, a day's wage for a loaf of bread, don't harm the oil or the wine. What it implies to me is that you have a group of people at the top that are calling all the shots, don't harm the oil or the wine, the elite class, and everybody else is crushed by the system that they're building. And it is an economic system meant to be collapsed, it looks like, in order to bring about the system that they want. Do you read it that way, or do you see some more things in there?
No, I do. I was going to read just a clip for you here. See if I can get up on my computer here. Okay, I'm gonna. This is really telling. There was a global scholar by the name of Parag Khanna. He's rated as one of the 75 most influential people in the 21st century. The guy is young, articulate. People love him around the world. Globalists do. And he wrote this book called Connectography, basically modeling the global city, how everything's connecting. And he wrote this in the beginning of his book. Listen to the context of this. This is a direct quote. We're building this global society without a global leader. That's the first point. Global order is no longer something that can be dictated or controlled from the top down. Globalization is itself the order. You just have to
Wow.
think this was stunning to me.
Wow.
This guy's not on our side, right? But he said we're building this global society without a global leader.
That is,
who's gonna fill that role one day? We know who it is.
wow.
We know who it is. You know, this whole system is tailor-made for the Antichrist, and he's the one obviously behind it in the first place because he's the God of this world. He can do those sort of things.
Wow.
But make no mistake about it. When it's finally matured, the Lord God in heaven will say, "That's it." The church will be out of here, and then the fun starts for them. For the rest of the world.
Yeah, that is absolutely intriguing to me. So
Yes.
people want you write about all these things every day, like on Substack. So you can subscribe to Patrick's Substack again. Just go there. You can see the links. You see it in his name here. You see it in the description. You can click on it. You can go there. And I encourage you to do it. I mean, to get that information, that's incredible. I mean, to put it that way, and that's so true. We know it's so true. We look and go, hey, they're going to build the system, the 10 kings, and then they're going to find that man, and there he is.
That's right. That's right. It's not Klaus Schwab. It's not Harari. It's not anybody else. Not Biden. Whatever. Right.
Right.
Whoever this person is, they're anticipating at some point. You just kind of read that in a statement.
Yeah.
They're anticipating someday there might be somebody who can handle this system and take it over.
They're waiting for their Messiah.
That's right.
We know it's still going to be the false Messiah, but they're going to think he has arrived. You said it a long time ago. You said, and I've used it like a million times since. Because it's so true. The Antichrist isn't going to waste any time building the infrastructure. It has to be built. Biblically, it's the only thing that makes sense. What you just read totally fits that. And that's why we're seeing all these things happen now. The system has to be in place, including the psyche of the people even has to be ready. So
yes.
The social engineering and the technical things, the UN pact for the future, all these different dynamics all coming about. Technology has to be where it is. Israel, obviously the attention is zeroing in on Israel as a nation. So many things happening that it's not coincidental. By the way, everybody, just want to remind you again, Jan Markell will be joining me on Monday. Jack Hibbs will be joining me on Tuesday. Naftali is going to be joining me at 412 Church in Temecula on October 13th, Sunday night, 5 p.m. Okay, Patrick, you said a lot there. By the way, these things are in Patrick's book at the Hope for Our Time store if you want to check them out. Patrick, your closing thoughts for everybody. Some of these things are pretty heavy for people, but you're someone that brings a lot of hope and a lot of joy. And could you close us out with some words that you would like everybody to know?
Well, let's say that you work for the State Department, or you're a mucky muck in Washington, D.C., and you were tapped to be an ambassador to a foreign country. And you think at first, well, that's a great honor until they tell you, well, you're going to be assigned to North Korea to be an ambassador there. First, you're going to wonder, will I ever get out alive? But what a nasty place to be the ambassador. Well, for instance, in 2 Corinthians 5:20, it says, Paul said, now we are ambassadors for Christ. Amen. We're assigned to this world, stinking as it is, to bring sense and the message, the gospel, the kingdom, for one thing. But the problem is, if you go into a foreign country, you have to learn something about it. You have to learn the language, for instance, the culture, some of the stuff that you don't do to get yourself in big trouble. You have to be sensitive to the culture that you're going into. It's no different here. The problem is Christians have a lot of truth and a lot of reality in their hands with the Bible, but they don't know what's going on in the world. They're just dead to it. So as ambassadors for Christ today, our role really is to take this whole body of truth, as much as we can see it, to take it to this world and explain to them what is going on, where the deception is. I mean, if you wanted to witness to a JW or a Mormon or whatever, you would expect that you're going to know something about their religion so that you can explain to them why that's wrong. And then you're going to give them the truth, right? It's the same thing with our culture at this point. Christians should measure up to understand what's going on in the world today. And that means you have to take the blinders off and take that to the message to the world. People are hungry. They're starving for information right now, Tom. You know that. They're absolutely starving for information. They're confused. They're running around like chickens with their head cut off, and there's chaos everywhere. People are, dropping dead all over the place. And now we got wars and rumors of wars, and people are so confused. Who can straighten them out except we Christians? There's nobody else on the planet really gets the whole picture.
So well said. So biblical. Stay with the Bible. The Bible explains what's going on. And so well said. Thank you so much, Patrick, for joining me today. And again, like, subscribe, share. It helps us combat the lies with truth. And everything that Patrick just said, we got to share the truth out there. We have the information, and one of the ways to do that is just by sharing something like this video, going to Patrick's Substack and subscribe and learn more. Just read it, and you're going to learn, and you're going to learn, and you're going to learn. Patrick, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule and joining me today. May God bless you, and everybody, remember, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Jerusalem, I'm telling you, is the bullseye. The enemy of our souls knows that, and God has told us. But Jesus is coming back. But this is going to be a very difficult time for the people of Israel until that day. Thank you again, Patrick. God bless you, everybody, for joining us. And let's press forward.